Yo, what is going on YouTube? I am Germ here. In this video today, I want to talk a little bit about one of the more interesting teams in the LEC and one of the more interesting players in the LEC. This is Team Vitality and Perkz. Obviously, 11 games into the spring split regular season, things are not necessarily going how a lot of people would have guessed. I know there was some people like, oh, this super team's going to fail. All super teams fail. Perkz sucks. Alphari sucks. Self-made sucks. Whatever. People had all different kinds of hot takes, but did you think they were going to be 5 and 6? I don't exactly know. But Perkz actually did give a recent interview, and he talks about a lot of interesting things in it. Because people have a lot of interesting questions right now. Why are we sucking? When are we going to be good? How good are we going to be? How are things going? How are you feeling? All this stuff. And just in general, when Perkz talks, people listens. Again, he's a very, very popular player who usually gives some good quotes and stuff. So let's just jump right into this. Make sure you guys do drop a like if you do enjoy it and subscribe to stay up to date on all my latest content. With that being said, here we go. There is this recent interview that just came out. I saw it on the front page of Reddit. People were talking about it. People really like it. There's a lot of different interesting discussion points from John Popko dropping another banger. And the headline's pretty good. He said, "We scrimmed them, and I do think that Rogue are actually the best team in Europe." And I think this was actually before Rogue lost their second game of the weekend. I think this was right after Rogue lost to Astralis, so Rogue was 9-1. And people are like, oh, their loss to Astralis was a fluke, or yada yada yada, whatever. But then after they lost 2 in a row, obviously now people have some more questions about whether or not they are actually the best team in Europe. But obviously that's what Perkz thinks so. But hey, we'll see how Rogue does, after losing 2 in a row now. So they start off the interview by talking about, obviously you don't look as fine-tuned as some of the other top teams. Alphari mentioned your guys' playstyle is a bit over-aggressive. Besides that, though, what do you think you can work on? And Perkz says, we have a lot of things to work on. It'd be hard to mention all the things we actually have to work on because there's so many of them. And I think that's an amazing attitude. A guy like Perkz, especially at his stage in his career, on a for the most part, veteran team. It's not like Alphari hasn't been around the block a couple times, or self-made, and Perkz. And yes, Labrov is pretty new, and yes, Karzi is pretty young. But man, that top side is, they've been playing for a couple years now, and they've had some success, each of these guys. Obviously, Alphari had a pretty good season last year. Perkz has obviously had an insane amount of success in his career. Obviously, self-made has had at least one decent run with Fnatic. So the fact that these guys, are still being very, very hypercritical of themselves, and still, especially Perkz being the leader of the team and the most successful guy, the fact that he's still saying they have so much to work on, he knows what it takes to be great. He knows what a great team and great players look like. And the fact that he's saying, yeah, we still have a ton to work on. We have so much to work on. That's great. And I think this is a good attitude. And hey, Vitality has shown signs of what they're capable of. They've had some good games. They've had some good individual moments. They've made some big plays. Yes, they have lost a lot of games, but I know everyone says it's kind of beat to death at this point. Yes, spring does not matter that much at the end of the day. Now, I don't think that means players should just phone it in. I still think spring is a time where you should be trying to win games. And even if you're not playing your best or have the best read on the meta or whatever, winning games and ramping up can still be valuable. Just throwing in the towel in spring split games because they don't matter is a terrible idea, in my opinion. And I do think a lot of teams and players kind of get into that mentality and mindset of saying, oh, this doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Like, you should tell yourself that it does matter, even if you know it doesn't. So I don't know. I thought that was a cool answer by Perkz. I love that he thinks they have so much to work on, and that they're really working on a ton of stuff. That actually gives me a lot of hope for the future of Vitality. Now, obviously, I don't love that they're 5 and 6 right now. I don't love that they've had such a bad start to the season, because I think they have enough talent that they should be doing a little bit better than that. But I did think that was cool. He said, on the LEC broadcast, you stated that you need all 4 teammates to follow you. That was from an old interview. I don't know if we covered that on this channel or not, but I think it was one, that most people saw. And, he just asked him a little bit about that. How is this different from like when you were on C9 or G2 or whatever? He said, I believe, but I can't say for sure, that I'm one of the players that tries probably the hardest to have his team on the same page. So that's one of his strengths. And I work really hard to try to make that happen. And, that's what we've heard all the time, that Perkz is that leader. He is that guy. He's not just a great individual player. He's a great team player. And obviously he has a very, very brilliant mindset for the game. Like I said, he knows what winning League of Legends looks like. He knows what it takes. And the fact that he can and is not only, able to do that, but willing to help instill that in his teammates, I think is very, very good. And if Alphari and Selfmade and Karzi and Labrov, if they all buy into that, this team can be very, very scary, because obviously individually all these players are probably good enough, to do a lot of damage. Obviously, there's some questions. Not everyone loves every single player on this team. There's some questions about just how good they actually are, actually can be, or whatever. But obviously, the team has an insane amount of potential. This I thought was a very, very interesting and spicy question. They asked how working with Self-Made compares to working with Jankos and Blabber, and he just kind of says he thinks that him and Self-Made work well. I think they're just both really skilled players, and they're playing the meta well. He says, I don't think Jankos or Blabber are doing something specifically insane or something bad. He just thinks that Self-Made and I are just both good players who are playing well together. So, he's not necessarily shitting on Jankos or Blabber or saying anything bad about them, but it does kind of sound like he's happy to be playing with Self-Made and really, really likes it. And I don't know if he's saying, he'd rather be playing with Self-Made right now than Jankos right now, but again, he just thinks that, hey, Self-Made is pretty damn good, and that's what most people in the LEC, say and recognize as well. He does talk about how he thinks, farming jungles just really, really good right now, and it's all about that. They ask him, a little bit about the Malrong playstyle that's, kind of feast or famine with a lot more ganking over farming, and Perkz says, just kind of depends on your team and stuff, and, you saw against Astralis, when the ganks don't work out, sometimes you can drop a game that you maybe shouldn't have. So obviously it's a way more volatile play style. And I think if you're the, this is me personally, I think if you're maybe the weaker team, hey, that play style might make a little bit more sense, not playing standard and trying to throw them off or whatever. But if you're the better team and you're going for some crazy ganks, like Perkz says here, if you go for a crazy gank like that and it doesn't work out, sometimes the game can just kind of be doomed for your jungler. And especially when you have a carry-oriented, or at least capable of carrying jungler and Self-Made, risking putting him so far behind, going for some crazy gank doesn't necessarily, make too much sense. And I think that's what Perkz feels like a little bit as well. They do talk about Rogue and Astralis a little bit. This is where Perkz says that, yeah, he thinks, Rogue is probably the best team in the LEC right now. They actually ask him about Smite coming to mid, and Perkz says, he hasn't seen it yet. He doesn't know. Smite mid, roaming sports and stuff sounds a little bit troll, but we'll see. But then, hey, there's the tweet of Perkz actually playing Smite support mid laners in solo queue. So maybe we'll be seeing that come to Team Vitality here soon. And it becomes even more likely because Alphari has come out and spoke, against Janna Smite top, and he's not a big fan of it, but hey, maybe he's a fan of Janna Smite mid. I don't know. It's just kind of funny there because Alphari, obviously with all those CSD memes and stuff, when you play Smite Janna top, it ruins your CSD, which I personally think should be removed from stat websites. I don't think Smite Janna top games should be included in laning statistics and stuff. I think it just makes your statistics pretty much meaningless, but I did think it's funny and ironic, or whatever the word is, that Alphari is obviously very, very against it. But here is a pretty spicy part of the interview that I did want to go over. He says, we heard recently that Yamato, whatever, I know people get mad when I say that his, talking about Wunder, his work ethic and professionalism have been excellent. Some saw this as contradictory to your previous statements in a serious context that Wunder played a lot of WoW over League. Would you mind elaborating? And Perkz defends him, which is awesome. He says, I liked working with Wunder. I have no issues with him. I think he's a good professional. I did mention that he didn't play as much solo queue as somebody else, but it's different from person to person, so I'm not going to judge it. I think he was a good teammate. Him playing solo queue or not playing solo queue is up to him. And I think that is an absolute, smash hit banger opinion. That's absolutely the opinion everybody should have. Now, does Wunder do some things differently? Yes, but even at the peak of his career, Wunder winning MSI, going to World Finals, doing all this amazing stuff, smashing a bunch of LEC top laners, Wunder was doing those same things. And when Wunder was playing amazing, no one was shitting on him for not playing solo queue, or no one was saying, hey, he's not taking stuff seriously, or he's unprofessional, or whatever. People just started to take some shots at him once he was a little more vulnerable, once he wasn't playing as good as he once was. And last year, I don't think Wunder was obviously his peak form or anything like that, but I don't think Wunder was bad. Maybe he had a couple bad series, maybe he was bad in the playoffs, but still, it doesn't change the stuff he's done in the past and the stuff that's got him there in the first place. So it was kind of weird that people really tried to scapegoat Wunder as much as they did. Perkz says right now he's playing a lot of League, and I know some other players in EU that also play a lot of League, but he says that sometimes mindlessly grinding solo queue is not going to be that useful anyway. Yes, obviously he says, there kind of is a lower limit of games that you need to play. But hey, that maybe grinding solo queue isn't completely necessary. And I think this is absolutely a conversation people need to be having more often. Obviously you hear of, the Chinese players, the Korean players that just grind and grind and grind and grind. They play through all hours of the night. They live a very unhealthy, very unsustainable lifestyle. And yes, obviously Chinese and Korean teams have been very, very successful. but they have insane player bases. They have a ton of talent. They have very, very well set up leagues. And for the most part, I think we're going to see over the next like 5 to 10 years that LEC and LCS players are going to be able to be way more sustainable. And that, you're going to have a revolving door of like, yes, the Koreans and Chinese players, they might have higher highs, but they're burning out at a faster rate. They're retiring. They're falling off, all these things. And everyone's different. There's absolutely diminishing returns in playing solo queue. You're not getting as much from your 50th solo queue game of the week as, playing enough to stay fresh, stay on top of things. Obviously, if the meta changes, if there's certain champions or matchups or whatever you need to learn, there's ways to do it. Some of it might be grinding solo queue, but some of it might just be, working smarter instead of harder. And like I said, compare Wunder's career's accolades to many players over in China and Korea, and his, what he's accomplished is much more than a lot of them have ever accomplished. Again, working way, way, way smarter and less, just grindy than a lot of them. So I thought this was awesome that Perkz, kind of stood up for Wunder. We've seen Perkz come out. We've seen Yamato come out. We've seen, obviously, Grabs come out and defend Wunder as well, and I think this is really, really cool. And, I'm happy that at the end of the day, despite all the flame and criticism and everything that Wunder got, some of it rightfully so. He did not have a great series against Mad Lions. He did not have a great series against Fnatic. Yes, he got clapped by Adam in Game 5, but again, that's just 2 playoff series throughout Wunder's career where he has been very, very stellar. And Wunder wasn't playing great, but G2 as a whole wasn't playing great. They didn't have great game plans. They didn't have great drafts. They didn't have great reads on the meta. We know that the team environment and dynamic was not exactly amazing at that time. So I don't know. It's right to say, hey, Wunder wasn't good. You can blame him. You can say he sucks or whatever. But then to say that he's unprofessional, lazy, he doesn't play enough solo queue, that is rewriting history, and that is just taking it a step too far. So I was really, really happy to see that Perkz kind of stood out against this and stood up for his old teammate. I thought that was really, really cool. And something that obviously Perkz didn't have to do. He didn't really have to comment it at all, or he could have, shit on Wunder or whatever. But really, really nice to see him obviously standing up for an old friend and an old teammate in what was overall, I think, a really, really great interview. But that is pretty much it for this video today, guys. Definitely drop a like if you guys did enjoy it. I would appreciate that so much. Leave a comment down below letting me know what you think about Vitality and Perkz right now. Are you worried about their 5 and 6 start? Do you think they're on the right track? Do you think they're going to win the LEC? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. Subscribe, stay up to date on all my latest content. Hopefully catch you guys in the next one. But until then, peace.